So, hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Rose, and I'm the co-founder of the Positive Identity Project. And I just recently came across Esther's video about meaning in life. And I was so lit up by it that I just had to talk to her. So we thought, why don't we share that conversation with our audiences? And so just let me add to who I am. That my website is jellyrose.com, and you can find my YouTube channel at Positive Identity Project. Well, let me allow Esther to introduce herself.
I'm Esther Gales. I'm a teacher that integrates Christianity, alternative spirituality, and psychology to provide holistic solutions for people's lives. And you can find me at estherregales.com or on my Substack by the same name.
Right, fantastic. And that video was so engaging. I remember the video started with nihilism. Kind of, we started in the dark corner. And so since nihilism is not something I'm super familiar with, I was kind of wondering if you could just tell me when you say nihilism, what it's meaning to you, and if we could start from there.
Yeah, so I think that nihilistic philosophy, in a nutshell, is like there's no meaning to life. What I find really interesting, though, is that I think there's two kinds of nihilists. So there is a kind of nihilist that heavily identifies with the philosophy, they're more cerebral. And then there are people who they may not identify as a nihilist, they may have never even heard of nihilism, but in their orientation, in their deeper way of looking at the world, they also have this disposition where there's not really any meaning to this all.
It's sort of depressing, I think, that the idea that there's not meaning. I don't know. It's like meaning is my rocket fuel. So it's hard for me to imagine how a person gets oriented to a life that's completely without meaning. This nihilism is one resolution of an existential angst that comes up for a lot of us. And that's sort of territory I'm more familiar with. But do you want to develop that point a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really great point that you make that it's, one kind of theory, or did you say solution to existential angst?
Yeah, it's like we hit this existential angst and have this question, is there meaning? And then it's a resolution. One way is to say, yeah,
Hmm.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
None of it, none of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you go into the deeper recesses of a nihilist mind, many times they come to this nihilistic resolution because it starts with a lot of them have this big question: why would God allow so much human suffering in this world?
Hmm.
Why do so many innocent people get harmed? And that questioning in itself is not bad. I think that there can be a desire for justice and fairness within that questioning, right? It's like, uh, you know, I don't understand why. It's trying to make sense of the nonsensical, of the absurd, of the tragic, and some just extremely tragic things in the world. That how can we comprehend that unless you're a psychopath or something. um and so the problem is not like the questioning, but I think that it's a false conclusion, it's an interpretation about God, about existence, about is there a spiritual realm, or is this all there is? And so I think that as a result of doubting that a loving creator would allow so much suffering, they come to this conclusion that believing life has no meaning explains why so much evil is permitted. Because I think that a lot of nihilists believe that if you think there is a greater providence to this all, that you're somehow saying that the evils are okay, that they're acceptable, that they're almost good. And I don't think that the alternative is necessarily that way. Sometimes people can get into spiritual bypassing, which is the other extreme. Maybe they'll even blame themselves for things that they actually are not responsible for. So sometimes with the idea of past life, for example, you can see that people say, I'm having this physical disability because something that I did in a past life, or I, went through this horrible situation where I was like, they got abused because of a past life. And I think that that's quite dangerous, and uh, that can oftentimes be a faulty conclusion, So I
This
have a lot to say about that, but
You just opened two directions that both of which are so interesting, but they're like both kind of extreme reactions to an existential moment or a dark night of the soul, maybe.
Mhm.
And I like, so if I got it right, it's one way is to say, wow, it's just chaos here. Good luck, everybody. And the other way is to say, oh no, it all makes sense and it's my fault. It's like I did something so wrong. And that idea of spiritual bypassing, when you said spiritual bypassing, I also thought about kind of denial. So you could overdo taking responsibility or you could
Mhm.
underdo it, right? And there's the razor's edge concept. It's like we're walking a really fine line here, but it all seems to start with the question of meaning and whether the suffering in the world has meaning. And the suffering can be so undoing just to look with open eyes at how much suffering there is it can just put you to bed. It's so intense and there's so much of it and it's so endless and relentless. And I think Tolstoy made a decision to give away all his wealth and gave it all away to people who were suffering and came to the conclusion there's no end. You cannot give enough to end the suffering. There's just so much of it. And I think I mean just to put it on a personal level, my little excursions into the dark recesses of my own mind are very, very productive in in locating sadness, regret, anger, disappointment, vengefulness, all the things, the greed, everything that I would not like to find. I can find it when I look inside myself.
Yeah, I know what you mean about the relentless suffering. And it's interesting because when we think about suffering in the world, we usually think about those extreme circumstances. But even in our individual lives, it just seems like the average life is filled with a dose of tragedy. And yeah, that can be hard to contend with.
Just coming clean with my own orientation. I know you said you have a Christian orientation. My orientation comes from yoga, so it's different, but I find so much resonance when I talk to you between these two systems. A lot of meditation practice in the yoga tradition is for what they call burning the seeds of the past. So a lot of it's letting go of that, and a lot of it is present focused with soothing the nervous system and easing suffering in the moment and being okay and at peace.
Can you share a little bit more about the seeds of the past? It's a new concept to me.
Oh yeah. So in this reincarnation package that we come in with in this system, and just full disclosure, I have not resolved my investigation of do I believe it or I don't believe it. I find it useful, and I usually
Mm,
use useful as a kind of a litmus test to see do I want to like use this or not? Do I want to believe it or not? It's not as important to me, but I do find it useful because I do find this taking responsibility useful in this sense. Let me give you a scenario. Suppose that I want to go into a new life. I haven't yet, here I am old, I'm 63, and I haven't yet learned to play the violin. So if I don't have another life coming, I might say it's too late. But if I have another life coming, I might say, well, then I'll have this seed of playing the violin, and I'll have a start. I'll have at least some inclination toward it, possibly the next time if I have a lot of interest in it. Now, this is where the useful, not useful thing can be demonstrated. It's useful in this life because it makes me more hopeful and more active. I don't say I'm not, I guess you might say nihilistic about it. No, I'm going to die. I'm not going to pick up the violin. I can say, well, why not pick up the violin? It's 70. I could still pick up the violin. So that's what I mean by useful, not useful, and the seeds. I have spoken with a Swami before, and he said that you take your top 10 desires into your next life. Basically, that your next life is going to be sort of framed around the things that you most yearn for, your top 10. I don't know. It's all it's kind of on the maybe list for me. Maybe, yeah. But then if I find it useful, I go ahead and act accordingly because I want my life to be, as livable as it can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you make a good point about the usefulness aspect because um, the usefulness can vary between person to person, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
one person might feel like this is a really useful system. Other people might say, might acknowledge the usefulness in a system, but then they might not personally resonate with it. So I find that pretty interesting too, is like we all kind of relate to different systems differently. And I was reading about how in the spiritual realm there's different communities and then people are organized by kindred spirits, so I kind of look at
Mm,
it like that where a lot of times I think that we're drawn to systems that are kind of like our kindred systems.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And you had brought up a not useful aspect of the reincarnation concept, which is being self-flagellating, punishing yourself for like things you supposedly did in the past. And that's debilitating, right? That takes your agency away. Instead of giving you more choices, it gives you fewer choices. So you're just flailing around in misery. That's not useful. So yeah, it's there to consider, but
Yeah, I was after I said that I was thinking about how like why would that not be very useful? How could that be debilitating in some way? And I think that, such as nihilists do, someone who might be spiritual bypassing, it's like not having, trying to create meaning in a way where it's like security ego driven. It's like sometimes things are so nonsensical that the interpretation, the conclusion that a person comes to, it's driven by a need for security because maybe what they have been through is so painful, and they can't make sense of this situation, whether it's from their childhood or in their adult life. Maybe it was just so painful, so like they don't know how to deal with that sort of grief, and so it's like, okay, I'm gonna create a meaning where I think they're striving for a sense of feeling more powerful, but because they're spiritually bypassing and they're trying to avoid the dark underbelly of their feelings and everything that comes with it, it can go the other extreme. But it's like a fine line, right? Like you said, with the razor's edge, because some people could take certain situations and maybe it would be like taking responsibility, but it's like I'd have to look into the nuances of their situation, what is motivating them and why
yeah.
they have come to certain conclusions, because in some situations it might not be self-blame. Perhaps it would be like them actually taking ownership of whatever they've been through. But I guess with the past life model, a risk with that is it's like, how do you even know that's really what happened? Um, So like they could say that I had a past life vision, but um, it's like that can be contested as well. So it's like you might be building your whole reality on castles on sand. Is like something that's not even true. It's complicated.
It's so complicated. And I guess that's why I go back to, is it useful? Like, is it helping you escape, not escape, but rise above misery? I think we all want to be free of suffering and misery. And it's either helping or hurting in that effort. And it reminds me of another thing I loved about the video that you made, because you really only went to, if I'm not mistaken, one, at least you went hard into one meaning making path, and that is service. And you developed a lot of different ideas about how just about anybody could avail themselves of this relief. And not everybody is going to relate to that right away, that service as a relief, but boy, did. When I heard you say that, I just said, yeah, she's got it. That's it.
Oh, I'm curious why that was a relief for you, and you can just share from how you feel. Like, why do you think that that was a relief
I,
for you?
I am in a really kind of like self-reflective space today. I think sometimes when we talk, I'm in a sort of like big picture space, but I'm kind of in a personal space. So I'm just going to speak from my personal experience. I have had some, serious struggles with mood and belonging and different things. And lots of them. And I remember specifically one night when I was crying and just really torn up, realizing that if I thought about other people and just thought about what would be good for them, like I just bring one person after another to my mind, like my sister, what would be good for her, and my mother, I was immensely calmed. It was a revelation and it never left me. It was one of those, oh, I get it. And I only need this lesson once. This is absolutely a relief to think of others instead of obsessing on one's own pain. No matter how legitimate that pain may be, it is such a relief to think well of others. Even saying it right now, I just feel my whole nervous system relax.
Yeah, and when you say that you are recalling, people in your mind, can you give me an example of what you mean? Like, so for example, are you sitting in bed or wherever and you're thinking like of the person and sending goodwill to them, or like, I'm kind of curious what you mean.
Oh yeah, so definitely a range of things.
Hmm.
Like, and I find it incredibly powerful. There are times when I'm just thinking, God bless this one and God bless that one. So more like a goodwill. And again, a caveat. It's like, I don't know if I believe in God, God means so many different things to so many different people. But anyway, so yes, goodwill toward this person and that specific person. And the more specifically I bring my mind to it, the more effective it is in relieving my distress. So, so there's that. But then there's also like, there was a time when I lived in a place where day after day, I would see this man bring his kids out to the car to go to school. And day after day, he'd be yelling at them. Adorable little kids, and he didn't look like a bad guy. And it was just heartbreaking to see this day after day. They come out of the house, are yelling, get in the damn car or whatever it was, just ouch, you know, and these kids doing the best they can. And so in that situation, I thought about what would be good for him. Like, I just wanted to conceptualize it. Like, in a situation like that, what could it possibly intercede to make that situation different? And when I talk about stuff like this, I'm like, it's not like I could reproduce this result, and I can't remember what I thought, but he never yelled at him again. I don't know. So it can be very powerful. We can affect, I believe we can affect people. I can't remember what I thought it was, what I can't remember what I came up with. I don't know if it happened, but I know that it changed. He brought them out peacefully after that.
Oh, wow. And you didn't talk to him directly, right?
No, I all I did was the same exercise, just what would be good here, just to think about it. And we so infrequently, in my experience, just stop and conceptualize goodness. I mean, we're usually busy, right? I'm busy. I don't usually set myself the challenge of just in the simplest way, what could possibly have a positive impact here? And that's all I did. I just asked myself that, how could this turn? And I came up with some answer, and I honestly don't remember what it was. But something
Oh,
changed.
that's so interesting.
It's
And
weird.
I absolutely love that. And
Yeah.
I know that's not that wasn't an accident. Like maybe from your intention that it came to him that what he was doing was not really great. And he may have thought, oh, that was a spontaneous thought, but it was actually like your mind was communicating with his somehow, like influencing him. So that's like the power of thought. But then what it reminded me of was the interconnectedness that we share with people. And sometimes that can get me very emotional because I think that we're all trying our best in this world. And um, yeah, there is this like interconnectedness with all of us, but then we can the only thing we can do is we can do the best we can to influence or maybe try to positively impact, but we can't be other people, right? And so,
Yeah.
but then I still think that the act of intending or prayer in a positive way, it is really powerful, and it's something that we shouldn't underestimate. So I really love that story.
It's a good one. Yeah, I believe we're connected, and the danger with talking about stuff like that is somebody says, "Oh, can you pray for me? I'm struggling with this," and it's like, no, I don't know. I really am not in that business, but that's a true story. It really happened, and I have other stories like that. It's hard to know how to exactly hold them and when to share them and that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that's a really challenging kind of line to walk with healers is that I think that prayer and like intending, welfare for people is always great. And then at the same time, I think that there's instances where it's like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to work with this person or maybe just have this like, energetic
Yeah.
barrier between me and them. Yeah, there's a whole other reasoning for that. Like, for example, I won't get too deep into it, but I've heard that there are some like ministers who they would be talking with people on the phone, and then sometimes if like those people, their stuff, their stuff that's like the euphemism for dark spirits
Yeah.
would sometimes come onto them. And so I think that a person not only has to get clearance, but I think they need to be up for the game. It's like if that person doesn't know how to maybe take care of themselves, and that can be an issue. So it's like you have to know your level as well.
Yes, very true. And I'm definitely a person who's still growing. I mean, just today I was thinking about I've got a persistent clump of negativity that I'm holding, and I was thinking about it, and the only positive move I could make with it is thinking that, ideas like it's darkest before the dawn, or it's a dark night of the soul, or or there's no way out but through, and that I don't want to repress. And so that's how I work with myself. I'm just saying to myself, this is something you need to be with. You need to be with it. And I work with it by being with it very specifically. So I try to be very conscious about it. And do I feel it in my body? And if I do, what shape is it? And if it's pain has a center, where's the center of it? So I work with it. What color is it? What texture is it? And so I stay with it that way. And that's the best I can do.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And those sayings are incredibly powerful, even though they seem like simple platitudes.
Hmm.
I love what you said about how those spiritual concepts like dark night of the soul or darkest before the dawn, or they're like metaphors, but they're really powerful and they really resonate with a lot of people. And I think that there's probably a spiritual correspondence to that as well. And that reminds me of the saying, light at the end of the tunnel. That's something
Oh
that
yeah.
carried me a lot through my own like very, very dark periods of life. I would be, for example, when I was in college, I was a commuter, and I had to drive home after school when it was pretty dark, when it was not daylight saving, or was it? Yeah, I think basically when it gets dark soon, it was like I'd have to drive home. It was pretty dark. And then I think like because I was going through a lot of loneliness at that time, it just felt even darker, to be driving home in the dark. So even though it was difficult, I would oftentimes think of that metaphor of the light at the end of a tunnel, and it actually helped me in those times I was driving home. It was like a comfort, even though like I still had my sad moments, but it was something that like helped me on my drive home because my commute was pretty long.
Mm. That's beautiful. I like that one too. And I think that a lot of times, we want to throw away cliches, but that sometimes the reason that there are so many cliches about something like that is that there's a little bit of truth to it. Like in one schematic I've seen of meditation and the goals of meditation, it's a person sitting on the edge of a deep, deep, deep lake. And there, the surface of the lake, the choppy waters, is our usual consciousness of the day and struggling to get what we want or to get enough money to get by or have a good enough suit of clothes to be seen in public or whatever it is. It's like, that's hard enough, right? But then we get down under these choppy waters and go through layer after layer after layer. And the bottom layer, this is what gives me so much hope about existential angst. The bottom layer is the darkest, and it's the stuff that we've pushed away that we don't want to deal with. It's all there at the bottom of this lake. So after you've learned all these techniques for calming your nervous system and accepted, using radical acceptance and everything, you get to this confrontation with yourself at that deepest level. And the light at the end of the tunnel in this schematic I'm recalling is that the whatever you want to call it, the Godhead, your true self, the Christ consciousness, the universal consciousness, whatever it is in whatever language you happen to speak, it's looking back at you. It's right there on the other side of that, the stuff you've been throwing away, right? The stuff from yourself that you've been throwing away and mashing down, your loneliness and disappointments. It's right there on the other side. And that makes me really happy. So I think there's some truth to this light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that brings us back to this fork in the road that is existential angst, right? So I feel a sense of sort of urgency toward people who have decided not to go further and just say, crocodiles eat ducklings. This world sucks, and I am, gonna have a hamburger and a milkshake or whatever. Well, I don't know, whatever it is. I don't know. It's like, who cares? I'm just gonna sit on my sofa and wait till the end. I don't know. I feel something for those people.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard something like that, crocodiles eating ducks.
They do. They do. There's so much disappointment. There's so much to not
Oh my
love.
gosh. That's horrible.
I know. It's this earth is kind of hard.
I know.
It's kind
Kind
of
of
hard.
reminds me of like giving mice to like boa constrictors. And it's so sad. It's like they're these they can be quite cute and adorable and it's like, it's just so horrible to to think about.
There's so much of it. There's so much of that. You have to have this so deep acceptance of cycles and appetites. I mean, really. But that's just the surface, right? That's just the surface choppy waters.
And it's not that the negative things don't exist, but I think it's kind of like focusing on what is good and also what we can control. Kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, it goes in line with the idea of usefulness because, like, all of the negativity going on, I think that can cause people to feel frozen at times. They're like, oh, there's just so much suffering and I can't really make a difference. And even if you put some good in the world, like this, there's always going to be suffering. Like that's the kind of place a lot of people go to. Like, what's the point of doing good when the negativity, the evil is always going to be there? And I think that's an understandable way to look at things, but it's not. I think that that doesn't mean that our positive deeds and focusing on the light, that there's no value in that, and like even just in our everyday lives, there's so much, not just beauty, but there's a lot of genius around us as well. And so like if you just go outside in an area where the landscaping is done well, there's a whole like connection with the city planners and how everything goes together. And like when you see places that are landscaped really, really beautifully with the flowers and the trees and everything is so symmetrical and aesthetically pleasing, it's like, wow, that's really brilliant in its own way. And so that's just one example, but there's everything like there's creation everywhere around us. And I think that's not something that we should take for granted. I think that some people might interpret that as being too materially rooted and having materialistic orientation, like being so focused on the world. I think that some people are really just immersed in the 3D reality
Mm.
and all the sensory pleasures. But beyond that, I think it's more just about appreciation. And when you realize that creation, whether it's art or something practical like building and architecture, that comes from the spiritual realm, because we don't just get it from nothing. It's like our consciousness, our imagination, it is connected to something higher. And that's kind of goes against where materialists think that the imagination all just comes from your mind somehow. It's like, no, it doesn't just come from. It comes from somewhere. There's a source. So I think that it's really interesting when you can see like the creationism all around us as an extension of the spiritual realm. That kind of gives me a sense of hope and vibrancy and joy, because I feel like that is, God's influence or God's hand in everything, or not the negative things, but like, but I guess the more beautiful and lovely things.
Yeah, it's two people. We're in a what do you call it, a mutual admiration society. We don't have a materialist here, right? Because the yoga idea is if you had a have a rock and you just leave it there, it's not going to evolve a consciousness, right? This materialism from a yoga perspective is nonsensical. So we agree about that, that we don't have anybody to argue against us on that point. But there are materialists out there, that's for sure. And a lot of them are happy. My stepfather, the person with whom I created the Positive Identity Project, he was the happiest person I've ever known. And he was totally a materialist. No, and I'm totally not. But he died recently, and I had this overwhelming sense of his presence after he was gone, and I was just thinking, ha, told you so. But who knows? Who knows what he experienced, of course. But the thing that's available to everybody across the boards, whether you're a spiritual person or a materialist person, is how you use your mind, right? Psychology is that cross point where we both, spiritualists and materialists, both meet there, right? So what we do with ourselves psychologically is going to be important one way or the other. And I think that that point you were making about genius, I really love that you just said that. There's beauty and there's genius. Because seeing a person's excellence, I mean, what could be more positive identity project than that? And I just want to put out there, I don't know when this video is going to come out, but on Thursday, July 16th, I'm going to do a workshop on this, and I'm going to link it in the video comments. Okay. But this seeing our own excellence, right? We see the excellence around us, but to see our own excellence is another thing that we rarely pause to reflect on. So when we go out and see the beautiful forestscape or whatever, oftentimes we will kind of consider ourselves separate from that. It's like, oh, I'm seeing some beautiful thing out there. But even in that simple moment of taking delight, you have to be the one who took delight in it. You have to be present in it. And seeing ourselves and our own capacities in that light can be really healing, whether we're spiritualist or materialist. It works either way.
Yeah, I know you make a great point about us thinking we're separate from uh, the what we have our attention on. Um, and yeah, to be able to appreciate that shows something within us as well. Um, and by the way, when you're saying materialist, did you mean like materialistic or like material versus spiritual?
Oh, I meant material versus spiritual. That's right. There are two meanings for that, like materialism being really into shopping and having and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't mean that. Yeah, I think the materialist point of view is you had hydrogen and then a whole bunch of stuff happened and then we could think and be conscious.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, first of all, I didn't sense that he was someone who's like materialistic, flashy. I mean, like his whole project is really service oriented. So I was like,
Yes.
I was thinking probably it was more to do with the materialist sort of philosophy, um, which is tied to the senses, and I think we understand what that means.
Yeah.
What's so interesting about materialists, I think that definitely there is a spectrum as well. So there are people who are materialists and I feel like their spiritual senses are just not open. Whereas there are some people who I think they have very materialist concepts, but maybe that inside their inner spirit, they actually are spiritual, because I don't know. I mean, it really goes to deeper recesses, a deeper inner reality, which they may not even know themselves. But I think that like some people might think like, oh yeah, I think there's life is just like this materialist and five senses, but then in their deeper inner spirit, maybe they actually do have concepts like faith, where they feel like there is a reason to life, that there is something to hope for and trust in. And so I find it really interesting how with some people there's a kind of a disconnect. Whereas I think if you're more self-aware, when you're really introspective, then that disconnect is a little there's less of that. It's closed. Well, not be totally closed, but there's less of that kind of distance, I guess. But then I think that I think that's one of the gifts of being intuitive is that you can understand your inner self better than someone that maybe they are more like logical oriented. So they
Hmm.
can have intuition too, but it's just like a different way of relating to their consciousness.
Yes, and we're getting close to one of the other topics that you brought up in the video, which was the mind of the infinite. Is that what you called it?
Yes.
That's such a great phrase. And of course, for me, as I've just made clear, I have the idea of that kind of evolution. At first, you have infinite, and then you have mind, and then you have other things, um, all the other wonderful things. And that it's definitely going from that direction of consciousness to materials rather than the opposite. But what did you mean when you said mind of the infinite?
Yeah, so I know that we come from different systems and have different paradigms, which is totally fine. But I guess in to sum up in a short way, it would be like the mind of God. It's like God's mind, and I think that God is spirit or the Holy Spirit, as Christians would say, and that spirit is infinite, and also it has a kind of intelligence that is infinite and
Mm,
far-reaching and is beyond our understanding. A lot of times, yeah.
it's beautiful. That's like in yoga, guru. Guru is a word that is has been sort of adopted and abused to be a teacher, like at the best, most respectful level, and getting it
Yeah.
still wrong, it might be considered a teacher, but it's not. It's a spirit of intelligence and a guiding spirit. I love those concepts. The whole idea of having this invisible friend force with us is very meaningful to me. And I know that's something that we would have in common that other people might not be lit up by.
I find that really interesting that you mentioned what you mentioned about guru. I didn't know that guru, the other meaning is like the infinite mind, because I always thought of it as like a human being. Or, sometimes people say you are your own guru, but similar meaning, it's like the human self. But you've said it's like the kind of a universal intelligence sort of
Yeah.
concept, right?
Yeah,
That's really interesting to
that's
me.
right. It's a guiding force. It's a guiding force, intelligence within us. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the mind of the infinite and then the other topic, and might be the last topic we get to today, is something that we just barely touched on already, the idea of toxic positivity. And that is so important because we're looking at systems, both of us, that ask us to have this light at the end of the tunnel. So, so for both of us, we're valuing positivity. And for a lot of people, and fair enough to say, it has become a toxic idea for them of fake it, right? Like, never mind how you really feel. You owe us a smile. And that is toxic, right? So in a way, it's toxic. But the concept, from my point of view, being in the positivity business, positive identity project, what am I going to do? For me, that orientation has kind of spilled over to people looking suspiciously at positivity altogether and saying, you're putting on rose-colored glasses. There's another cliche, right? That it's thin and it's fake, this positivity you're peddling.
Yeah, I agree that this um, idea of toxic positivity is where anything positive is seen as toxic, right? And it's almost like people have aversion to positivity. Like positivity actually becomes toxic to them. They have an intolerance to it, like an allergy. And the same with skepticism, where people can have this intolerance, this aversion to faith. And so I'm curious. I mean, I have my own views, but why do you think some people have such a disdain or an intolerance, an aversion to, positivity? And
Well,
maybe you can speak from your own experiences as someone who's, been in this work for a long time.
yeah, for me, I need to work at positivity. I really need to, like was talking about before, stop and do it intentionally, because my nature is very negative biased. And if I let my mind just do its own thing, it'll either be very scattered a lot of the time. I can get on a task. I don't have a problem paying attention. So I find myself in a number of different modes that are not positive because I might be either doing, that's a lot, which yeah, generally feels basically good. But what future am I working toward? If I stop myself and say, what are you feverishly working toward? I'm like, I don't know. And then if I stop, and then the negative tapes start rolling. Anyway, it's not gorgeous in here. It is by a long stretch of the imagination, not really a sexy place to be. So for me, I need it. I need
Mm,
positive practices. I need them. But other people, I think what happens is they feel like it's being imposed on them.
mm.
That's what I think is the difference between me and other people. And nobody wants to hear you're doing it wrong. They want people to take it seriously that they're suffering, right?
Hmm.
Well, I take it serious. I take my suffering seriously, and the positivity helps with it. That's where I am.
That's such an excellent point you made that people feel like you're imposing your positivity on them. But what's really going on is that they're projecting this feeling of inadequacy onto other people. And so when they have this view that other people view them as less than for not being positive enough, for not getting their stuff together, it's
Yes.
this resentment.
Yes.
It's this rage. And what is going on is they have not confronted the rage and the resentment within. And I'm just gonna say it as it is. A lot of them, they're disconnected from their heart. So it's like, I think that when you're disconnected from your heart, when you are afraid to look within the darkness of your soul, your life, it's easier to just project other people. Like, oh, you're a fake person. We can't be positive all the time. And so what's going on is actually fear. They're afraid of looking inside and finding the dark things and grieving, because the truth of the matter is no one's imposing onto them. I mean, there can be people who are like, oh, why can't you be like your brother, or why can't you be like your sister, or there's those kind of voices that can exist. So like an internalized parent, outer critic that gets internalized. But ultimately we're here in our adult bodies, right? No one is imposing positivity on you. And the positivity, it doesn't have to be this fake Pollyanna positivity where it's toxic positivity, but this is more like objective positivity. So, for example, say that someone said, I'm just a loser and I'm, meant to just be a loser my whole life. And then say I said that, no, you're not a loser, and I was trying to like coach them and uplift them in some way. That's not being toxic positivity. That's I'm actually trying to bring them to a more objective place, an objective self-evaluation about themselves. And I think that again, it goes back to fear, not just looking at the darkness, but it's about being vulnerable, about being open. And so when a person has, when we have darkness inside, sometimes love, light, unconditional acceptance, those things are scary. We feel like, well, I can't trust that, I can't trust the love, I can't trust the light, I can't trust these things. I find it so interesting how in a lot of near death experiences, particularly people who maybe were very negatively oriented, um, some of them have an experience where they, like the infinite mind, where they realize that this whole time God is with them and loves them and shining in his face was smiling, and their whole life they thought God either didn't exist at all or that God was angry at them and shaming them and they're lower than a cockroach or something like that. So, I'm just going to add a little side note. I do think that there is such a thing as divine laws, and you know, God's nature is, holy and pure. But I also think that when it comes to the darkness, it's like that's us a lot of times doing it to ourselves. People, if they are living an evil life, for example, like yes, there's cause and effect with that, but then it's not like God is hating them or says, I don't like you. I think that that's a misconception. That's another reason why people are afraid to, yeah, just to look within. It's like they feel like, you know, even if we do have things in ourselves that we can reform and, transform, I think it's about transparency with, um, you know, God. It's like just putting on a table, and it's like it's still there's going to be that acceptance, not of the dark things, but it's just like I think that there is. God can not agree with the negative actions, but still love you as a human being.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I love that. And I loved what you said about that negative stuff is stuff that we're doing to ourselves. Because really, at the level of the mind, at that psychology level, that's where that's happening. And there are levels beyond that where it's not happening at all. And it's the light at the end of the tunnel to get there and to view ourselves from that radical acceptance. And I hope people have the courage, like you're saying, that there's a fear involved in this idea of toxic positivity. And yeah, I feel for that. I really do. I really feel for that, and hope that more people give it a chance. The way we do the positivity in the Positive Identity Project is simply to ask people to think of a positive moment when they've smiled or felt relieved recently. And you just would be surprised how hard that is for most people to do because we're in either rushing or negative modes, a lot of us, so much of the time, out of habit, or like you were starting to talk about, out of defense, right? Like you don't want to be vulnerable. So you build up these rejective sheaths around yourself, and it is scary to change.
Yeah. I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about skepticism because, this kind of goes back to the philosophical event we were going with about nihilism in the beginning. So, maybe you can share some things about that, like maybe your experience with skeptics or what you think about skepticism.
Well, I got a lot of healthy respect for skepticism because I think it's really important to have your own experiences.
Mm,
Really, really important. So this is
hmm
one of those things where I want to split it right down the middle. If you are skeptical, but you're testing and trying, that's really cool. That's really cool. Like if someone had told me, oh, if you pray for that man, he'll stop yelling at his kids. I would want to be skeptical of that.
Yeah.
Enormously skeptical. But then if I wanted to try it, I would pay really close attention to exactly what I do and exactly what the effect is. So a skepticism that makes you a critical observer and a keen observer of cause and effect. Whoa, that's great. On the other hand, a skepticism that does not allow you to grow or try, that's a tragic skepticism in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you that there's different modes of skepticism. Like, well, there's a skeptic community, but we're talking about like the process of skepticism right now. And
Mm.
yeah, there's a difference between someone who's skeptical because they're trying to exercise critical thinking and like make sure that they have a balance between intuition and their emotion and rationality. And then also there's the other side where it's like that person is hardcore science based and everything has to make sense through a scientific model and, the materialist paradigm where it's like there's no room, there's no opening for, what is spiritual, what is, I guess, infinite. And it's so interesting to me because, like, I think that a lot of them, they understand that the cosmos is vast and the universe is, we can't know things, but at the same time, then they try to put all of it in a box of science. Like it doesn't, it's very strange to me, actually. It's like, I don't feel like it goes together. It's like they're like, okay, well, yeah, the universe is so vast, but science. It's like, huh?
Yeah, that, and also for consciousness, I mean, you only have to have one dream in your whole life to know that there's another realm of consciousness, like right next door to this one. You could fall asleep right now. I could lose consciousness of you, and I could be, I don't know, eating an apple with Einstein, or you can dream anything, right? And this world goes away, totally gone. So the dream rules suddenly apply. And that's something everyone has experienced. So when we're in this materialistic mode, we're really fixated on this small fraction of the day when we're awake. And it's just like a third of our states of consciousness that we all know about.
Yeah, and you make a great point where it's like, well, where do we go to in our dreams anyway? Like, what was that? And it's like, well, it's just, from your mind. And it's like, no, I don't think that was just from your mind alone, sir or ma'am. It's like, it's so much more than that. And it's just another one of those nonsensical, well, no offense to the materialists out there, but nonsensical, it makes sense, but doesn't really make sense kind of ways of thinking, in my opinion. I find it strange how, people can have these like very rich, symbolic, or, however the dream is, but basically you can kind of sense that it's not of this world, that there's another reality a lot of times. But then I think that, what can be perceivable to the senses, that is understandable, it's graspable by the finite mind. Um, so yeah, I just find it so kind of a paradox how people can have this view that, like, like this universe is so vast, but then they kind of actually they limit that by believing that all there is the material world. It's just a strange paradox to me.
All right. Well, this has been great. I think I hope we'll do it again sometime. And I just wondered, I mentioned that I'm teaching a workshop pretty soon. I'm also going to mention that I'm going to link to my free PDF, and that puts you on my newsletter that will let you know about classes that are coming up. But what's coming up for you, Esther?
I have a website, my YouTube channel, and then I have a Substack. They're all the same name, Astragalus, and there are two R's in the middle.
Well, your YouTube channel is on fire right now. That's why we're talking to each other, because you're putting out such stimulating, interesting content on YouTube. And I hope everybody is going to get to see that more. So we'll link to your channel. Okay?
Thanks so much, Jennifer. It was a pleasure, and I hope to talk with you again soon.
It's always a pleasure.